Is this thing on? Hello? Hello? Whatever. What's up, everyone? Alex Johnson here. Welcome to episode 4 of The Little Johnson Show. I've got another great guest for you today, but before we get to him, I gotta remind you, get on Underdog Fantasy, download their app, or go to UnderdogFantasy.com and use promo code YARDSPER. All one word, YARDSPER. And on your first deposit, they're gonna put $25 right into your account. Boom! How about that? On today's show, I have my favorite breakout star of 2021, and that is the young fantasy mind. It's Hutchinson Brown. What is up, my man? Where can the people find you? What's going on? Let's get this thing going.
What's up, everybody? Hutchinson Brown here. Just to let you know where you can find me, you guys can follow me on Twitter at TYFMNFL. Please go check out my podcast, the Young Fantasy Mind Football Podcast. Most major podcast platforms, you can find it. And then go check out my website, theyoungfantasymind.com. You could find the podcast over there. You could find my rankings. And you can find my articles over there as well. Pretty much everything I do is on that website. So just go over there, theyoungfantasymind.com. You can find everything you need to know over there. And that's pretty much it.
Awesome, man. But now that the people know where to find you, let's get to the good stuff. Name a player who you are pounding the table for in 2021.
So, who's a player that I'm pounding the table on for 2021? Now, it was Cam Akers. Unfortunately, now he's hurt and he tore his Achilles and he's not going to be playing this season. So, the guy I'm really pounding the table on right now, I'm getting him pretty much every single draft. It's a late guy, it's a sleeper, but it's Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is a guy that now that he's the 1B of the offense in Baltimore, he's going to see a lot of volume and he's very efficient and he's just going to be a decent flex play every week and you're getting him super late in your draft. So Gus Edwards is the guy for me.
I was with you on Cam Akers, man. That one hurt. Still hurts. But I'm also with you on Gus Edwards. He's a guy that you know what you're getting when you put him in your starting lineup. He's got standalone value, and he was an RB3 or better in 9 of the last 11 games last year. People think of him as an in-between-the-tackles grinder, short yardage, goal line guy only, but he's actually explosive. He broke a run of 15 yards or more on 6.2% of his runs last year, which was 7th most among all running backs. If anything were to happen to J.K. Dobbins, he's a weekly RB2. Give me your thoughts on DeAndre Swift in redraft leagues. Are you worried that he's in a bad offense? Are you worried about Jamal Williams taking carries? Or are you all in?
I've been back and forth this offseason. The beginning, I was more hesitant. I was not really loving him. But now I'm more in. He's a top 12 back in my rankings. And I've just realized that, look, this offense is totally bad. But number one, running backs on bad offenses can still be great, especially if they're involved in the pass-catching game. And, he did it last year. In those games, in week 6 through 10, he was a top 8 back for fantasy football on limited touches. He wasn't a guy he was a guy seeing about 15, 16 touches a game, and he was still producing some great numbers. And it wasn't crazy touchdown dependent. He only had a couple touchdowns in that stretch. DeAndre Swift is a guy that it's tough because of Jamal Williams, and it's tough because his offense is bad. But his talent went through all that last season. Maybe not Jamal Williams, but there were other guys involved, and he was on limited touches, and he was still in a terrible offense without Kenny Golladay. And he still produced great numbers, so I don't see why he can't do it this season. But I get the concerns, and I get the reasons for not drafting him, but I'm in on DeAndre Swift for 2021.
I'm all in too. I just made a TikTok about this exact thing. Who cares if Jamal Williams takes some carries? Swift is going to get 100 targets. Even in a bad offense, a guy that involved in the passing game and in the red zone is going to outperform his end of round 3 ADP. And as you mentioned, he was still really good on limited touches last year. He played on just 49.1% of the snaps and still averaged over 14 fantasy points per game. This guy is an exception to the rule of don't draft running backs on bad offenses. How about Adam Thielen? Is he washed? Is he finished? Or has he still got something left? What do you think?
Is he finished, or can he be a top 24 receiver in 2021? Right now, he's right on the edge of the top 24. He's wide receiver 23 in my rankings. But I am avoiding him in all my drafts, and here's why. He was strictly touchdown dependent last year. In the games that he did not score a touchdown, he never scored 10 points. And he only had, I might get this wrong, I think it was 6 games with 4 catches or more. With more than 4 catches, sorry. He had 6 games with more than 4 catches. Like, he was strictly dependent on touchdowns last year. And with Justin Jefferson possibly taking a step forward, with Irv Smith possibly breaking out, Tyler Conklin being there, Dalvin Cook still being there. And I just don't see too many worlds where Adam Thielen hits double-digit touchdowns. Sure, Adam Thielen will finish in the top 24, but it's not going to feel that way because there's going to be a lot of those games where he doesn't score a touchdown, and it's not going to be fun for your fantasy team. And you're drafting him as your wide receiver 2, or maybe your flex. If you're drafting him as your flex, I might not be too mad at that. But as your wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 option, I just don't know, because he might finish in the top 24, but it's not going to feel like it. It's really not.
I think you're right. He's not completely finished, but he's far from the highly productive guy he was a couple years ago. I have him as my wide receiver 26. And that's because outside of Jefferson, outside of Thielen, there's really no other wide receivers that are going to step up in that offense who can take that wide receiver 2 role. So really, by default, he's got to be at least a top 30 guy. Who is one player outside the first 5 rounds that you hope to get in every draft?
That guy would be Gus Edwards, but I did already talk about him a little bit. So I do want to talk about a different guy here. Let's talk about Darnold Mooney. Darnold Mooney is a guy that, like, the Bears are clearly confident. They got rid of Anthony Miller because of their confidence in Darnold Mooney. They said that themselves. It's not just me saying that. There's news coming out that they got rid of Anthony Miller and sent him to the Texans because of their confidence in Darnold Mooney. That's huge. Now, Darnold Mooney is pretty much the locked-in number 2 option, unless we see Cole Kmet take a huge step forward, which I don't really see for this year. But if we see Darnold Mooney take that step, get the locked-in number 2 role with a good quarterback in Justin Fields on this solid offense, this guy could be a wide receiver. This guy could be a higher wide receiver 3, even a low wide receiver 2. I could see that happening. We see plenty of NFL teams have 2 top 24 receivers on their teams. Like, we see that all the time. We just saw it with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett last year. We saw it with Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson last year. It happens all the time. Darnold Mooney could totally get into that top 24 range. I don't see that happening personally. I feel like that's pretty much his ceiling. But I could see a wide receiver 3 finish, and you're getting him as your wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 in drafts. I'm very happy with that. Darnold Mooney is the guy I'm targeting heavily in drafts. I really like the fact now that Anthony Miller is gone. I really, really like that for his upside. And this situation is looking really, really good for him.
That's right. Mooney is locked in as the number 2 option in that passing game. He's got great speed. He's going to be a deep down the field guy. And guys like Trubisky, guys like Foles, they couldn't get him the football in those areas of the field. Justin Fields is a much better skill set match than those guys were with Darnell Mooney. He's going to be able to get Mooney deep down the field, and that's exciting. Outside of fantasy football, what is something you're really passionate about or something we don't know about you?
So the one thing I would probably say about myself is I love to draw. Like, I might not be the best at it, but I just love, like, sitting down. Like, still life's usually my favorite. Still life, you don't know what that is. It's when you look at an object or look at, like, a picture of something and you draw it just by looking at it on a piece of paper. That's like one of my favorite things to do. I know it's a little bit weird, but, it's really one of my favorite things to do, and I'm not really the best at it, but, it's still something really fun for me, and that would definitely be the one thing that sticks out. I mean, maybe another thing, I love playing sports. I'm a pretty athletic kid. I've run cross country for my school the last few years. Well, actually in middle school and my last year, my freshman year of high school, ran for the school, cross country. I've played some flag football, played a lot of basketball. played baseball, but just a lot of sports. So yeah, I mean, I know you asked for one, but those are the two.
That's awesome, man. I like to ask that question to all my guests. I think it's great to get to know everyone a little bit beyond their fantasy football takes. But let's end with this. Give me your boldest prediction for 2021.
Boldest prediction for 2021 is that DK Metcalf finishes outside the top 8 receivers in 2021. I actually have it ranked that way too. DK Metcalf is like my wide receiver 10 in my rankings for full PPR. Look, this is a crowded offense, right? Gerald Everett, potential breakout tight end. You got Dwayne Eskridge, recently drafted guy. You got Tyler Lockett, just signed to a big extension. Chris Carson's involved in the passing game. And then you have DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf, 50% of his routes last year were slants and fly routes. They were not using him in a creative way. And that's partly DK Metcalf's fault. I mean, it's definitely the Seattle's offense fault because they're not using him right. Or they're not using him creative enough. But that's also partly DK Metcalf's fault. I feel DK Metcalf is a little bit overrated as a football player. As like a pure prospect, he's insane. Like, he's a monster. But in terms of like his route running ability, I feel is a bit overrated. I feel he's not very versatile. I feel like he's kind of like a little bit of a slant guy. Like, I just slant and fly route guy. I just don't really know about him. And like, this is still a very run heavy offense. They want to run the ball. They're focused on running the ball. Like, Pete Carroll has said that many, many times. And the volume's not going to be there for him to be like that stud top 8, top 5 kind of guy, and you're drafting him as a top 5-ish guy. It doesn't make sense. It really, really doesn't. He's not going to be there for you half the weeks. Around half the weeks, I don't think he's really going to put up a good performance. And I don't want that for my wide receiver 1. Maybe he's my wide receiver 2. I would be fine with that, but if it's my wide receiver 1, no way. I'm not going to take that. Obviously, most receivers have bad weeks, but DK Metcalf's going to have a lot of bad weeks because the volume is not going to be there.
For more takes like that from Hutchinson, follow him at TYFMNFL on Twitter and find all of his podcasts, rankings, and articles at theyoungfantasymind.com. Thanks, Hutchinson. Let's get out of here. He's a guy that you know what you're getting. He's a guy that you know what you're getting when you put him in your lineup. He's a guy that you know what you're getting when you put him in your starting lineup. He's a guy that people think of. He's a guy that people think of as a in between the tackles grinder, short yardage guy, and nothing more. But he's actually explosive. He broke a run of 15 yards or more on 6.2% of his routes. But he's actually explosive. Who cares if Jamal Williams takes some carries? Who cares? That's right. Mooney is locked in as the number 2 wide receiver there. That's right. Mooney is locked in as the number 2 option there in the passing game. With Fields coming in. Boom. How about that? Boom. How about that? Boom. 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 For more takes like that from Hutchinson, follow him at TYMML. For more takes like that from Hutchinson, follow him at TYML. For more takes like that from Hutchinson, follow him at TYFMNFL on Twitter and find all of his. For more takes like that from Hutchinson, follow him at TYFMNFL. For more takes like that from Hutchinson, follow him at TYFMNFL on Twitter. And